6 brand new artifact sets have been added to solo leveling Arise, and today I'll be covering what all of these new sets do and which hunters are going to pair very well with them. So the first set I want to talk about is going to be Chaotic Infamy, which is a set that is tailored around increasing your hunter's performance in teamfight game modes like Guild Boss and also Power of Destruction, whilst also catering to hunters who use a lot of basic skills and also a lot of mana points. And this is all because on its 8 set effect bonus in the teamfight mode, your damage dealt will increase by 40%, which is very, very powerful. But more importantly, the Chaotic Infamy buff that this set does actually apply and can actually activate it once you have stacked the enhanced Infamy buff 10 times, which you do just through using any skill in the entire game outside its support skills. And if you already know what this Chaotic Infamy buff actually does, you might think it's possibly one of the most broken things in the game. However, that isn't quite the case, because what Chaotic Infamy does is it will increase the user's basic skill and ultimate skill damage by 100%, whilst also removing the damage taken increase effect on yourself, and will finally help you regain 5% of your mana points when you use a basic skill every 30 seconds, which again is going to be very, very good for hunters who do spam a lot of basic skills. And the part of this buff that isn't actually quite as good as what it may seem is going to be the 100% increase in damage of your basic skills and ultimate skills. And the reason for this damage buff not being as good as it may seem is because this 100% increase is actually additive and not multiplicative, which basically means that when you combine its damage bonuses with either skills or weapons that already have a lot of built-in damage increases, you will actually be gaining much less than a 100% damage increase. And one of the best examples to properly showcase how this isn't actually as good as it may seem is going to be through Sung Jinwoo's weapon being the Divine Quarterstaff, because through this weapon's mana power concentration buff, it can increase the damage of its skill by up to 500% because it can stack the 100% increase up to 5 times, which of course will give you a total of a 500% skill damage increase. So when you then add the 100% extra basic skill damage from the Chaotic Infamy buff, it will actually obviously add to it, making it 600%, meaning in total you'll only really benefit from a 20% damage increase as opposed to a 100% that you may have previously thought. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the Chaotic Infamy buff is going to be bad, because it is still very, very good for a lot of hunters like Kane, Mirai, and Charhain, because all of these hunters do suffer with mana issues, so being able to benefit from the extra 5% that you can get every 30 seconds is going to be very, very good for them. The next set I want to talk about is going to be Destructive Instinct, and this is going to be very, very good for a lot of breakers who like to deal lots of damage, because essentially on its 2 set effect bonus you can basically increase the damage of skills with the break effect by 30%, and that can then also be further increased up to 60% once you do get it on its 4 set effect bonus, which will easily make it the best DPS option for breakers who do like to do lots of damage, which means for hunters like Goto Ryuji, Sorin, and also even Gogen-Hee, this set will be absolutely amazing for all of them, because for example Goto does like to have a lot of skill damage increases and likes to stack a lot of crit damage, and Sorin as well through her limited break buff or even her enhanced limited break buff can also make her deal a lot of damage. And with Gogen-Hee and his ability to spam many skills and many core attacks makes him deal a lot of damage, so being able to increase their break skill damage by up to 60% is going to make all of these hunters very good with the Destructive Instinct set. The Chaotic Wish artifact set is up next, and this is very, very good for practically every supporting hunter in the entire game, because on its 8 set effect bonus you can decrease the cooldown of all of your basic skills by 10%. However, in exchange for that you unfortunately have to increase your skill mana point consumption rate by 20%, which is then followed up by the Chaotic Wish buff that you can apply to your whole entire team, which is activated when the user uses their ultimate skill, support skill, or even their core attack. And this method of activation actually does quite heavily differ from Burning Blessing, because Burning Blessing can only activate through using support skills, tagging out, or using an ultimate skill, which means for stuff like teamfight content like Guild Boss and Power of Destruction, it will be very, very easy for you to activate the increase of attack, defense, and HP by 15%, because all your supporting hunter has to do is activate and use their core attack, which means that you can get this increase of 15% very, very quickly. And like I said before, I do think this artifact set is going to be very, very good in teamfight content, but also when ran with Sung Jinwoo on a hunter who's using their support skill to buff his damage, because for example you can run one hunter with Chaotic Wish to buff your attack, defense, and HP, and then you can run another hunter with Burning Blessing to then buff your damage, and then finally you can run another hunter with, for example, the Guardian set with like Sylph's Blessing or something like that. Up next we have the Iron Will artifact set, and this is going to be a very, very good DPS set for a lot of defense scaling hunters, because the 2 set effects will allow you to increase your defense by up to 8%, so nothing really too crazy. But the 4 set effect bonus is where it really does shine, because when the user uses their ultimate skill, it will allow you to increase increase your defense by 5%, stacking up to 5 times, which in total will allow you to increase it by 25%, and then once you then add the extra 8% from the 2 set effect, you can then get a total of a 33% increase in your defense, which is pretty good. And then finally as well, you can benefit from a 50% increase in your ultimate skill damage one time, which has a cooldown of 20 seconds, which means when it comes to which hunters are going to be very, very good with this set, it is going to be pretty obvious that Charlotte and also Thomas Andre are going to both be very, very good with this, because both of them press their ultimate skills very, very often, and especially with Thomas Andre, who has 2 different phases to his ultimate, which will allow him to stack that defense increase pretty quickly, because once you then transform, you can get 1 stack of defense, and then when you then use his Black Hole Crash, you then get another further extra 5% defense. Chaotic Desire is the final new 8 set effect artifact set that we did actually get, and this one is very, very good for pretty much every breaker in the game. And this artifact set is very, very similar to Burning Greed in the way that actually functions, because when attacking enemies that are at an elemental weakness, you can increase your break effectiveness by 30%. But more importantly, you can activate the Chaotic Desire, which is very powerful and can be activated once you've stacked the regular Desire buff 20 times, which is slightly different to Burning Greed because Burning Greed is only 10 times. So with Chaotic Desire, getting that activated, it is going to take quite a lot longer. But I do think the buffs are definitely worth it, because once you do activate Chaotic Desire, you can increase the damage of the user's skills with the break effects by 50%, so it's pretty similar to Destructive Instinct. But more importantly, what you can then do is you can increase the user and your whole entire team's elemental damage by 40%, which will help not only give your breaker a lot more damage, but also will give your main DPS and the rest of your team a lot more damage. The final new artifact set that we did get is actually called Shining Star, and this is very, very similar to Outstanding Connection, but does have enough differences to make it very, very good. Because where the main differences lie between Shining Star and Outstanding Connection is going to be within the 2 set effects. And basically on their 2 set effect bonuses, they will both apply a 12% attack increase to yourself and also your whole entire team, but the way they both activate it is actually different, because Outstanding Connection activates the 12% attack increase for your whole entire team when you tag out and then bring in another hunter, whereas with Shining Star is actually the complete opposite, and it's when you then bring in a hunter as opposed to switching one out. But then the 4 set effect bonus is completely the same as Outstanding Connection with Shining Star, because you can increase the attack increase effect to 28% and make it last for 15 seconds, which is very, very good. But what is then actually very, very interesting with Shining Star is that you can actually combine it with Outstanding Connection and actually stack their attack increases. Because as you'll see right here, Shining Star actually has its own separate name as a buff, which means it's completely separate to the attack increase that you will get from Outstanding Connection, which does mean that you can actually combine them together to create up to a 56% attack increase, which will also then make the Shining Star artifact set good with literally any support that is run with literally any attack scaling DPS, which will include the likes of Gina, Hansemi, Isla, but only if you use Silvermane Baekhyunho, Min Byung-gu and Akari, only if you use Char-Hain, and then finally Maylene Fisher with Alicia. So there you have it, that is all of the brand new artifact sets and what they do and who they're good for. And overall, if you did enjoy this video or you just found it useful in general, then don't forget to like and subscribe, and as always, I will see you all in the next video. Peace!